With the Beatles' invasion of America and the growing popularity of Britain's newest sensation, the Rolling Stones, David was even more determined to find fame as a musician. His next band was the Manish Boys, and he had a plan to make sure people heard more from the group than just their music.
The rebellion of the long hairs is getting underway. A 17-year-old, Davy Jones, has just founded the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Long-Haired Men.
Well, I think we're all fairly tolerant, but for the last 2 years we've had comments like darling and can I carry a handbag thrown at us. I think it's just had to stop now.
The media hype helped the Manish Boys land several respectable gigs, but eventually they too broke up. In 1965, still calling himself Davy Jones, the singer joined his fourth rock band, the Lower Third. But at the time, there was another Davy Jones on the music scene. In order to avoid confusion with the future Monkees member, David looked to American history in his search for a new, sharper-edged surname.
He saw this character, Jim Bowie, with the Bowie knife, and that name stuck in his head.
In September of 1965, at the age of 18, David Bowie was born. But it would be years before the singer would find the fame he craved. The kind of fame that young men from Bromley could never, ever dream of. By 1966, the London scene was in full swing. From the fashions of Carnaby Street and the world's first supermodel, Twiggy, the music of The Who and the Yardbirds, a new youth culture had transformed the city's once buttoned-down lifestyle. That same year, David Bowie released his first solo single, Do Anything You Say. Though the song, which Bowie also wrote, failed to register on the charts, it did help him get a manager. The 19-year-old was signed by Ken Pitt, who'd once been the British representative for such stars as Judy Garland, Frank Sinatra, and Duke Ellington.
Ken was a lot older than us, and he must have been at least 20 years older, and a showbiz kind of icon in the sense of theater.
One of Pitt's first suggestions was for Bowie to put together a cabaret act featuring nightclub standards and show tunes. David at first liked the idea and began rehearsing, but he soon decided he wanted to do more than sing other people's material and went back to writing and recording his own music. But David's career frustrations paled in comparison to a devastating development in his personal life. His 29-year-old half-brother Terry began exhibiting signs of schizophrenia.
David told me he was prone to fits of violence, you know, outbursts of violence, but his emotions were being controlled by drugs at the time.
Terry's mental state worsened. It wasn't long afterwards that he was committed to an institution, and David began to worry that the illness might eventually afflict him as well. In September of 1966, David's manager lined up a contract for him with Durham Records. In light of Terry's situation, the good news was bittersweet. But David was reassured about his career, and his parents, especially his father, were delighted.
David's father was very supportive. He did encourage him a lot with his music.
Unfortunately, David's debut album, entitled David Bowie, sold poorly. The singer was discouraged, but his manager had more plans for him. Ken Pitt convinced his client to pursue acting in addition to music. And in 1967, David was cast as a drawing that comes to life in the short film, The Image. David discovered he loved acting, and that fall he began studying with performance artist Lindsay Kemp, who had been taught by famed mime Marcel Marceau.
Lindsay probably was the biggest single influence on David. Lindsay taught him so much about the stage, about projection, about makeup, about clothing.
While working with Kemp, Bowie met Hermione Farthingale, a refined young woman from a middle-class family. David instantly fell for the doe-eyed dancer, and it wasn't long before the two were living together. In the summer of 1968, David teamed up with Hermione and friend John Hutchinson to form a group called Feathers. The trio used a mixture of music, dance, and poetry in their performances at venues around London. The following year, Ken Pitt financed a short promotional film to showcase Bowie's singing and acting talents. Love You Till Tuesday was built around several of David's songs. But David was devastated when Hermione broke up with him during production, explaining that she felt overwhelmed by the intensity of their year-long relationship.
He was pretty upset that his girlfriend had just left. Broken-hearted, actually, bless his heart. She was obviously very important to him.
David tried to dull his pain by focusing on a new venture. In 1969, he helped organize the Beckenham Arts Lab. The performance workshop was run out of the back of a local bar and gave various artists a chance to showcase their material. David also continued to develop his own ideas. A few months earlier, he'd seen the futuristic adventure 2001, A Space Odyssey, and had been inspired to write and record a song called Space Oddity. The tune was the tale of an astronaut named Major Tom, who is lost in space. The single was released in July of 1969, just days before the first manned moon landing.
Ground control to Major Tom. 7, 6, commencing countdown, engines on. 3, 2, check ignition, 1, and may God's love be with you.
Space Oddity was heard repeatedly in Britain during the week Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, and David was ecstatic.
This is ground control to Major Tom.
But the song quickly slid down the charts. In the US, the record received almost no airplay. The fleeting taste of success both tantalized and frustrated David. Luckily, a new woman in his life helped distract him from his disappointment. Angie Barnett was an eager, aspiring singer who set out to play a role in shaping her new boyfriend's career.
She was a very foot-forward American girl who was larger than life in her approach.
As members of the counterculture movement of the late 1960s, David and Angie rejected the traditional rules of romance. Though they were a committed couple, they were free to date others if they wanted. Soon after meeting, David and Angie traveled to Malta for an international music competition. David's song, When I Live My Dream, from his debut album, had been entered in the contest and was singled out as Best Produced Record.
It was the first award he'd ever won, and he took it home to his dad so he could sort of legitimize, look, Dad, I won this award. I'm not just this old long-haired wanker.
But within days of David's receiving his first professional recognition as an artist, his father, Hayward Jones, died of pneumonia following a sudden illness.
David took it like a man. He went and arranged all the funeral arrangements, and he took the responsibility from his mother, and it's quite amazing the way he handled it. If he had any emotional response, he was careful not to show it.
In September 1969, as David was coping with the loss of his father, Space Oddity renewed momentum and climbed the British charts, reaching number 5. Almost immediately, David tried to build on the success of the song by releasing a second album. As before, sales were disappointing. Like Major Tom, David Bowie's rock and roll dreams seemed to be drifting away. But by taking a controversial approach to performing, the singer's career would soon be launched into a whole new orbit.